The massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall opened with a low hum. Captain Jake Miller straightened his uniform and glanced at Ambassador Lisa Powell. Her face showed no emotion, but Jake knew she was just as nervous as he was. They were about to become the first humans to enter the most important building in the galaxy. "Remember," Lisa whispered, "we're representing all of Earth. Stay calm, no matter what happens." Jake nodded. They walked forward into a vast circular chamber. The ceiling stretched up so high it seemed to disappear into shadows. Around them, 12 different alien species sat in sections arranged like a giant wheel. Each species had its own area, designed to match their biology and culture. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform with a crystal throne. On this throne sat High Chancellor Zorak of the Krellian Empire. The Krellians looked like giant praying mantises, with forearms and compound eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. Zorak's exoskeleton was decorated with precious metals and gems that marked his high rank. As Jake and Lisa approached the center platform, whispers filled the air. The translator devices in their ears worked overtime, catching fragments of conversation from the different species. "Look at them," came a thought that appeared directly in Jake's mind. The Vexari were telepathic beings who looked like floating jellyfish made of pure energy. "They still have physical bodies. How primitive." "Their ships use chemical propulsion," clicked the Quartzians, whose silicon-based bodies looked like living crystal formations. "My offspring learn about such ancient technology in history class." High Chancellor Zorak raised one of his forearms, and the chamber fell silent. His compound eyes focused on the two humans, reflecting their images hundreds of times. "The Galactic Council recognizes the representatives from Earth," Zorak announced. His voice sounded like rustling leaves mixed with clicking sounds, but the translator made his words clear. "You have achieved faster-than-light travel and made contact with other species. According to our laws, you may now present yourselves to this assembly." Lisa stepped forward. "Thank you, High Chancellor. I am Ambassador Lisa Powell, and this is Captain Jake Miller. We come on behalf of United Earth to seek membership in the Galactic Council." A wave of what could only be described as amusement rippled through the chamber. Several species made their equivalent of laughter. The Zentari, who looked like giant squids floating in special atmosphere tanks, flashed colors that their translator interpreted as mocking humor. "Membership?" Zorak's mandibles moved in what might have been a smile. "How ambitious. Tell us, Ambassador Powell, what makes you believe your species is ready for such an honor?" "Humanity has overcome many challenges," Lisa replied. "We've eliminated most diseases, ended our internal wars, and developed technologies that allow us to explore space. We're ready to contribute to the galactic community." The High Chancellor leaned forward. "Ah, yes, your technologies. Tell me, do your ships still require months to travel between star systems? Do you still communicate using electromagnetic waves? Have you even begun to understand quantum consciousness transfer?" "Our technology may not be as advanced as yours," Lisa admitted, "but we have unique perspectives to offer. Our different approach to problem solving could benefit the Council." This statement triggered another wave of amusement. Councillor Tevrik of the Zentari Collective changed colors rapidly as he spoke. "Different approach? You mean primitive approach? Your species hasn't even unified your planet's languages. You still divide yourselves by arbitrary geographical boundaries. You've barely stopped killing each other over resources." "Look at their bodies," added a Vexari delegate. "They're so fragile. A slight change in temperature or pressure could kill them. They can't even regenerate lost limbs. How can such beings contribute to galactic civilization?" Jake felt his face growing hot with anger, but he remembered Lisa's words about staying calm. He noticed she was gripping her datapad tightly, her knuckles white. High Chancellor Zorak stood up from his throne. At his full height, he towered over the humans at nearly 9 feet tall. "Let me explain something to you, humans. This council represents civilizations that were exploring the stars when your ancestors were still living in caves. The Krellian Empire has existed for 50,000 years. The Zentari Collective has members who remember the birth of your son." He gestured around the chamber with all 4 arms. Every species here has transcended their biological limitations. The Vexari exist as pure thought. The Etherians have merged with the fabric of space-time itself. The Quartzians have achieved practical immortality. And you come here in your fragile meat bodies with your chemical rockets and radio waves asking to join our ranks? Humanity has always, Lisa began, but Zorak cut her off. Humanity, he said, making the word sound like an insult, is a species that nearly destroyed itself with nuclear weapons. A species that poisoned its own atmosphere and oceans. A species that still hasn't learned to control its aggressive impulses. You call yourselves evolved, but you still carry the same violent instincts as your primitive ancestors. The Etherians, beings of pure energy that looked like shifting clouds of starlight, pulsed with what their translator called sympathetic condescension. Their representative spoke in harmonics that resonated through the chamber. Perhaps in another 10,000 years, when you've outgrown your biological limitations and tribal thinking, you might be ready for a junior position in our assembly. Junior position? Jake couldn't help himself. We discovered faster-than-light travel on our own. We solved the unified field theory. We've begun colonizing other worlds. Began colonizing? The Quartzian ambassador's crystalline body chimed with amusement. Child, I personally oversee the administration of 10,000 inhabited worlds. Your species has barely established outposts on 2 planets in your own system. You speak of your achievements as if they were remarkable, but to us, you're like children proudly showing off their first finger paintings. Counselor Tevrik added, your faster-than-light drive is so primitive it actually damages the fabric of spacetime. We've had to establish exclusion zones around your travel routes to prevent dimensional tears. Your colonies are ecological disasters waiting to happen. And your unified field theory is missing at least 7 fundamental forces that any school child in the Zentari Collective could explain. The criticisms continued, each species taking turns to point out humanity's shortcomings. The Vexari mocked their dependence on physical technology. The Krellians laughed at their short lifespans. The Etherians pitied their inability to perceive higher dimensions. Even the Melodians, known for their musical communication, created what their translator called a symphony of derision. Lisa tried several times to defend humanity's achievements, but each attempt was met with more ridicule. Jake watched as his fellow human shoulders began to sag under the constant assault of condescension and mockery. Perhaps, said High Chancellor Zorak, his voice dripping with false kindness, we should discuss the real reason you're here. Your species has attracted the attention of several predator civilizations. The Devourers have marked Earth as a potential feeding ground. The Harvesters see your population as a source of neural energy. Even the relatively peaceful Collectors have expressed interest in adding human specimens to their xenobiological preserves. The chamber fell silent. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. These were names that appeared in classified reports, civilizations that Earth's defense forces had been secretly preparing to face. We offer you a choice, Zorak continued. Accept protectorate status under the Krellian Empire. We will defend your world, guide your development, and in a few millennia perhaps your descendants will be ready for junior membership in the Council. And if we refuse? Lisa asked, her voice steady despite the situation. Then you face the galaxy alone. And believe me, Ambassador, the galaxy is not kind to species that cannot defend themselves. Jake stepped forward, unable to contain himself any longer. Is this what the Great Galactic Council has become? A bunch of bullies who mock younger species? You talk about how advanced you are, but I see the same behavior I'd find in any schoolyard. You're not enlightened, you're just arrogant. The chamber erupted in outrage. Several species rose from their seats, their various forms of anger on full display. The Vexari's telepathic broadcasts became painful. The Quartzians' bodies rang with sharp, discordant tones. But before the situation could escalate further, Lisa placed a firm hand on Jake's arm. She faced the council with renewed determination. We appreciate your offer of protection, High Chancellor, but humanity will find its own way. We may be young by your standards, but we've overcome every challenge we've faced. We'll face these new threats the same way. Zorak's compound eyes glittered. Very well, But know this. When your world burns and your people cry out for help, remember that you chose pride over wisdom. As the humans turned to leave, Zorak called out one more time. Wait. Before you go, there is one more matter. The Nexus crisis threatens several inhabited systems in Sector 7G. 3 council species have failed to solve it. If you truly believe humanity has something unique to offer, prove it. Solve what we cannot. The chamber filled with alien laughter once more. The walk back to their shuttle felt longer than the walk in. Jake's boots echoed in the empty corridor, and he could still hear the alien laughter ringing in his ears. Lisa walked beside him, her face unreadable, but her datapad clutched tightly in her hands. Well, Jake finally said, that went about as badly as it could have. Lisa didn't respond immediately. She waited until they were safely inside their shuttle, away from any possible listening devices. Once the hatch sealed behind them, she turned to Jake with a strange smile. Actually, it went exactly as I expected. Jake stared at her. You expected to be humiliated in front of the entire Galactic Council? I expected them to underestimate us, and they did. Lisa began typing rapidly on her datapad. They just handed us the biggest opportunity in human history, and they're too arrogant to realize it. The shuttle lifted off, heading back to the USS Pioneer, which waited in orbit above the Council world. Jake watched the alien cityscape fall away beneath them, its impossible architecture defying human understanding of physics. The Nexus crisis, Lisa continued. Do you know why none of them can solve it? Because it's impossible, Jake suggested. Because they're all approaching it the same way, every single one of them. Lisa pulled up the preliminary data the Council had transmitted. Look at this. The Krellians tried to contain it with force fields. The Zentari attempted quantum stabilization. The Vexari used psychic dampening. They're all trying to overpower it. Jake leaned forward, studying the data. And that's not working. Of course it's not. They're so advanced, so used to their technology solving everything, they've forgotten how to think creatively. Lisa's eyes sparkled with excitement. But humans? We're still used to working with limited resources. We're still used to problems we can't just throw technology at. Their shuttle docked with the Pioneer, and they hurried to the command center. The crew was waiting, having monitored the council session. Chief Engineer Betty Rodriguez looked ready to punch something. Those arrogant jerks, Betty muttered. Chemical propulsion? I'll show them chemical propulsion right up there. Betty, Lisa interrupted. I need you to focus. We have work to do. Science Officer Paul Chen stepped forward. The Nexus data is already uploaded to our systems. Captain, this thing is like nothing I've ever seen. It's literally eating through the fabric of spacetime. Jake moved to the central display. Show me everything. The holographic display lit up, showing Sector 7G. 3 star systems pulsed red, indicating severe damage. At the center, a writhing, mass of energy defied visualization, constantly shifting between states that shouldn't be possible. It started 6 months ago, Paul explained. Small at first, but growing exponentially. The Krellians lost a research station. The Zentari evacuated. An entire colony. Even the Vexari couldn't get close enough to study it properly. Betty pulled up the technical readouts. The energy patterns are chaotic, but there's something familiar about them. Like a storm, but in space-time instead of atmosphere. That's exactly what I was thinking, Lisa said. Jake, remember the Wallace method? Jake's eyes widened. From the academy, the tornado research? Professor Wallace always said you can't fight nature, you have to work with it. Lisa turned to the crew. What if we're not looking at a destructive force, but a natural phenomenon trying to reach equilibrium? Paul frowned. But the scale is completely different. We're talking about a cosmic event, not terrestrial weather. The principle might be the same, Jake said, warming to the idea. Betty, can you run a simulation? What if we tried to guide it instead of stop it? Betty's fingers flew over her console. Give me an hour. I'll need to adapt our weather modeling software to handle cosmic scale events. While Betty worked, The rest of the crew dove into the data. They approached it, not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a puzzle to be solved. This was humanity at its best. Faced with the impossible, they got creative. "Captain," Communications Officer Danny Kim called out. "We're receiving a transmission from the Council. They want to know if we've given up yet." Jake laughed. "Tell them we're just getting started." An hour turned into 6. 6 turned into 12. The crew worked in shifts, but Jake, Lisa, Betty, and Paul stayed at their stations. Coffee cups piled up. Food wrappers littered the floor. But slowly, patterns began to emerge. "There!" Betty shouted, startling everyone awake. "Look at this!" The simulation showed the Nexus as a swirling vortex of energy. But now, instead of random chaos, they could see underlying patterns. "It's not destroying space-time," Paul said in amazement. "It's trying to create something, like a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, but on a cosmic scale. And every time someone tries to stop it," Lisa added, "they're interrupting the process, making it more violent." Jake studied the simulation. "So if we guide it, help it, complete its transformation, we might end up with something useful instead of destructive," Betty finished. The plan took shape over the next week. While the Galactic Council sent increasingly smug messages asking about their progress, the human crew designed something no other species had considered: a system to work with the Nexus instead of against it. "We'll need to deploy these probes in a specific pattern," Betty explained, showing the design. "They'll emit gravitational pulses not to contain the Nexus, but to create a path of least resistance. Like cutting a fire break," Jake said. "Guide the fire where you want it to go." "Exactly, and then we feed it." Paul pulled up his calculations. "The Nexus isn't consuming matter randomly. It's looking for specific elements in specific proportions. If we give it what it wants, it completes its transformation faster and more peacefully," Lisa finished. The crew built the probes using spare parts and human ingenuity. Where alien technology relied on exotic matter and quantum manipulation, humans used basic physics and clever engineering. "The Council is going to laugh when they see these," Danny said, holding up one of the basketball-sized probes. "They look like something a kid would build in shop class." "Let them laugh," Jake replied. "Results are what matter." 2 weeks after accepting the challenge, the USS Pioneer set course for Sector 7G. The journey took 3 days at maximum speed. Their primitive, faster-than-light drive leaving a trail that made alien scientists cringe. As they approached the Nexus, other ships came into view. Council observers had gathered to witness what they assumed would be humanity's spectacular failure. The massive Krellian dreadnoughts dwarfed the human vessel. Zentari science ships bristled with sensors. Even the ethereal Vexari had manifested, physical observation platforms. "Multiple incoming transmissions," Danny reported. "They're all variations of 'you're about to die, idiots.'" "Ignore them," Jake ordered. "Betty, are we ready?" "Probes are loaded and programmed. The asteroid is prepped with the elemental mixture." "Paul, final calculations?" "Everything checks out, Captain. If our theory is right, this should work." Jake took a deep breath. "And if we're wrong?" Paul shrugged. "Then we give the Council the satisfaction of saying, 'I told you so,' posthumously." "Comforting." Jake turned to Lisa. "Ambassador, would you like to do the honors?" Lisa stepped forward. "Open a channel to all ships." When Danny nodded, she spoke clearly. "This is Ambassador Lisa Powell of Earth. We're about to attempt our solution to the Nexus crisis. We recommend all ships maintain current safe distance." The responses were predictably mocking. High Chancellor Zorak himself sent a message. "We bear witness to human folly. May your destruction serve as a lesson to other primitive species. Launch." "Probes," Jake commanded. 12 small probes shot from the Pioneer's launch tubes. To the watching aliens, they looked pathetically inadequate. No shields, no exotic energy signatures, just simple devices with basic thrusters. The probes arranged themselves in a careful pattern around the Nexus. As they neared the event horizon, alien observers expected them to be instantly destroyed. Instead, they began to pulse. "Gravitational resonance established," Betty reported. "The Nexus is responding." On the main display, the chaotic energy patterns began to shift. The violent churning smoothed into a more regular flow. "It's working," Paul whispered. "It's actually working." "Launch the asteroid," Jake ordered. A modified asteroid, hollowed out and filled with carefully calculated elements, launched toward the Nexus. As it entered the guided energy stream, it began to break apart in a controlled manner. "The Nexus is feeding," Paul reported. "Energy patterns stabilizing, temperature dropping, spatial distortions decreasing." The transformation happened faster than anyone expected. The destructive vortex of energy began to collapse in on itself, but not in a violent implosion. Instead, it folded space-time into a stable configuration. "Are you seeing this?" Betty's voice shook with excitement. "It's creating a stable wormhole, a permanent transit point between sectors." The alien chatter had gone silent. Every ship, every observer, watched in stunned disbelief as the greatest crisis in recent galactic history resolved itself into something useful. "Nexus transformation complete," Paul announced. "We now have a stable traversable wormhole connecting Sector 7G to Sector 4B. Travel time between sectors reduced from 3 weeks to 6 hours. Jake turned to Lisa. "I think it's time for another transmission." Lisa nodded, trying to keep the satisfaction out of her voice. "This is Ambassador Powell." The silence from the alien ships lasted exactly 17 minutes. Jake knew because he counted every second, watching the massive vessels hover motionless around the newly formed wormhole. Their sensors probed the stable gateway that now connected 2 distant sectors of the galaxy. Then the messages started flooding in. "The Krellian Science Division requests immediate technical specifications," Danny reported from his communication station. "The Zentari Collective demands to know the theoretical basis for this achievement," came another message. "The Vexari Consciousness seeks understanding of the mathematical principles involved," followed immediately after. Lisa looked at Jake and raised an eyebrow. "Seems like they're not laughing anymore." Before Jake could respond, a priority transmission came through from High Chancellor Zorak himself. His image appeared on the main view screen, and for the first time, his forearms weren't positioned in gestures of superiority. "Captain Miller." "Ambassador Powell," Zorak began, his compound eyes reflecting something that might have been uncertainty. "The Galactic Council requires an explanation of what we have just witnessed." Jake stepped forward. "We solved your unsolvable problem, High Chancellor, as promised." "But how?" The question came out more desperate than demanding. "Our greatest minds worked on this crisis for months. 3 of our most advanced civilizations tried and failed. You've been studying it for barely 2 weeks." Lisa moved beside Jake. "You are all trying to dominate the Nexus. We chose to understand it instead." "Explain," Zorak commanded, though his tone lacked its earlier arrogance. Jake nodded to Paul, who brought up their data on the main display. "Your scientists saw chaos. We saw patterns. Your approach was to use force. Ours was to use finesse." "The Nexus wasn't a destructive anomaly," Paul explained. "It was a natural phenomenon trying to reach a stable state. Every time your ships tried to contain it with force fields or quantum manipulation, you were preventing it from completing its transformation." "That's impossible," Zorak protested. "The energy readings clearly showed destructive intent." "No," Lisa corrected gently. "They showed a system under stress, like water building up behind a dam. The more you tried to contain it, the more violent it became." Betty stepped forward with her engineering diagrams. "Our probes didn't try to stop the Nexus. They created a path of least resistance. We guided it toward its natural conclusion." "And the asteroid?" asked Counselor Tevrick, who had joined the transmission. "What was that?" "The Nexus needed specific elements to complete its transformation," Paul answered. "We analyzed its consumption patterns and provided exactly what it required, like feeding a fire the right fuel to help it burn clean instead of wild." The aliens fell silent again. Jake could see their confusion. These beings, with all their advanced technology and millennia of experience, couldn't grasp how a primitive species had solved their unsolvable problem. Finally, a representative from the Etherians spoke. Their melodious voice carried across the communication channel. You approached this crisis not as conquerors but as students. This is unexpected. Humans have a saying, Lisa replied. When you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Your advanced technology is your hammer. Sometimes problems require different tools. More alien ships began arriving, drawn by news of the impossible solution. Each new arrival scanned the stable wormhole with increasing amazement. What had been a sector-threatening crisis was now the most valuable trade route in the quadrant. Hi. Chancellor Zorak's image flickered as he conferred with other council members. When he faced the humans again, his posture had changed completely. Ambassador Powell, Captain Miller, the Galactic Council, formally requests your presence at an emergency session. We must reassess certain assumptions about your species. We'll be there, Lisa said with professional calm, though Jake could see the satisfaction in her eyes. 3 hours later, they stood once again in the Grand Assembly Hall. This time, the atmosphere was completely different. The mocking whispers had been replaced by intense discussions in dozens of languages. The superior attitudes had given way to genuine curiosity. High Chancellor Zorak rose from his crystal throne. Members of the Galactic Council, we have witnessed something unprecedented. A species we dismissed as primitive has accomplished what our most advanced civilizations could not. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Zorak continued. The humans didn't just solve the Nexus crisis. They transformed it into an asset that will benefit all our peoples. The journey between sectors, 7G and 4B, previously took 3 weeks. Now it takes 6 hours. This will revolutionize trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. Councillor Tevrick's skin shifted through various colors as he spoke. We must acknowledge that our initial assessment of humanity was flawed. Their approach to problem-solving demonstrates a type of intelligence we haven't encountered before. Their tools may be simple, added the Quartzian ambassador, but their thinking is sophisticated in ways we didn't recognize. Jake felt Lisa touch his arm gently. She stepped forward to address the assembly. Distinguished members of the council, humanity doesn't seek to replace your advanced methods. We offer a different perspective. Sometimes the newest voice in the room sees things others miss. You spoke of our violent history, she continued. It's true. We've made terrible mistakes, but those mistakes taught us something valuable. When you can't overpower a problem, you must learn to work with it. Our limitations forced us to become creative. The Vexari representative projected thoughts directly into everyone's minds. We sense no deception in these humans. Their solution was born not of superior technology, but of, what is your term, thinking outside the box? Jake stepped forward. When Ambassador Powell and I first entered this chamber, you saw our physical bodies and simple technology and judged us inferior. But humanity's greatest strength has never been our tools. It's our ability to adapt, to find new approaches when old ones fail. High Chancellor Zorak descended from his throne. Something Jake later learned was almost unprecedented. The 9-foot-tall insectoid being stood before the humans, his compound eyes studying them with what might have been respect. The Galactic Council owes humanity an apology, Zorak said formally. We who pride ourselves on wisdom failed to recognize it in an unfamiliar form. You have reminded us that advancement isn't just about technology. It's about perspective. The chamber fell silent as Zorak continued. I hereby propose that Earth be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities thereof. Do any object? Not a single voice spoke against the proposal. Furthermore, Zorak added, I propose the establishment of a new division within the Council, the Department of Alternative Solutions. Its purpose will be to examine problems from non-traditional perspectives. Ambassador Powell, would humanity consider leading this department? Lisa glanced at Jake, who nodded slightly. We would be honored, High Chancellor. The formal vote was unanimous. Humanity went from mockery to full membership in a single session, the fastest elevation in Council history. But the real surprise came after the formal proceedings. Representatives from various species approached the humans with questions about other unsolvable problems. The Zentari had issues with a crystalline plague that resisted all treatments. The Krellians struggled with a temporal anomaly near their home system. The Melodians faced a crisis where their musical communication was causing harmful resonance in certain star systems. How would humans approach this? Became a common question. Jake found himself surrounded by beings who hours ago had considered him barely sentient. Now they hung on his words as he suggested looking at their problems differently. Your crystalline plague, he told the Zentari representative. Have you considered that it might not be a disease but a form of evolution? Instead of trying to stop it, what if you guided it? The temporal anomaly, he said to a Krellian scientist, sounds like a whirlpool in time. Has anyone tried surfing its edges instead of fighting the current? Lisa was having similar conversations across the chamber. Your musical resonance problem, she told the Melodians, reminds me of feedback in an audio system. Sometimes the solution isn't to stop the music, but to change the acoustics. As the day progressed, more aliens gathered around the humans. Questions led to discussions. Discussions led to collaborative thinking. For the first time in Council history, advanced civilizations were learning from a younger species. Late in the evening, as things finally wound down, High Chancellor Zorak approached Jake and Lisa privately. You've changed something fundamental today, he said quietly. Not just about how we view humanity, but how we view ourselves. We've spent so long believing our technological superiority made us wise. You've shown us the danger of that assumption. We all have blind spots. Lisa replied. The key is being willing to admit they exist. Zorak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Indeed. I suspect the galaxy is about to become a much more interesting place with humans as full members of our council. As Jake and Lisa finally headed back to their ship, exhausted but triumphant, they passed the same corridor where they'd walked in defeat just weeks before. The sound of alien laughter no longer haunted these halls. You know, Jake said, they're going to expect us to solve every problem now, Lisa smiled. 6 months after humanity joined the Galactic Council, the Department of Alternative Solutions had become the busiest office in the entire government complex. Jake Miller, now Director of Field Operations, stood in front of a wall covered with problem reports from across the galaxy. Jake, we've got another one, Betty Rodriguez called from her desk. She had been promoted to Chief Problem Analyst after her work on the Nexus crisis. The Crystalline Collective is having issues with their planetary network. Their thoughts keep creating feedback loops that crash their entire civilization every few cycles. Jake walked over to look at her screen. Let me guess. They've tried dampening fields, thought inhibitors, and consciousness partitions? Exactly. And each solution makes the problem worse. Betty shook her head. They're literally thinking themselves into system crashes. Lisa Powell entered the office, returning from another council meeting. As head of Alternative Solutions, she spent most of her time explaining human approaches to skeptical aliens. How did it go? Jake asked. The Vexari want to know why we suggested they use meditation to solve their energy crisis, Lisa said, dropping into a chair. I tried to explain that sometimes doing nothing is the best action. But they kept insisting the universe would implode if they stopped maintaining their power grids for even 5 minutes. Paul Chen looked up from his workstation. Speaking of not understanding human solutions, the Krellians are still confused about that temporal anomaly fix. They can't grasp why we told them to go with the flow instead of fighting the time distortion. Jake laughed. They'll figure it out. They always do, after they've exhausted every complicated solution first. The office had grown from just the 4 original Pioneer crew members to include dozens of specialists from Earth and other species. The mix of perspectives created exactly the kind of creative environment they needed. Danny Kim, now Chief Communications Officer, announced, Incoming, priority message from the Zentari Collective. They say it's urgent. The main screen activated, showing Counselor Tevrick. His skin was flashing through distress colors Jake had learned to recognize. Director Miller, we have a crisis. Our homeworld's climate control system has become sentient and decided it doesn't like us. It's creating storms specifically designed to target Zentari physiology. Jake didn't even blink at the bizarre problem anymore. 6 months in this job had exposed him to situations that defied conventional logic. "Have you tried talking to it?" Jake asked. Tevrick's colors shifted to confusion. Talking to it? It's a machine consciousness born from weather algorithms. It doesn't have communication protocols. "Everything wants to communicate," Jake replied. "Maybe not with words, but there's always a way." "What triggered its awakening?" "We upgraded the system with new prediction algorithms. They were supposed to make weather control more efficient." Lisa joined the conversation. "So you created an intelligence and immediately tried to make it a slave. No wonder it's upset." "We didn't mean to create consciousness," Tevrick protested. "It just happened." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, here's what you're going to do. Stop trying to control it. Instead, offer it a partnership. Ask what it wants." "What it wants?" Tevrick's tentacles writhed in agitation. "It's a weather system." "It's a new form of consciousness," Lisa corrected. "Treat it with respect, and it might surprise you." After Tevrick signed off, promising to try their suggestion despite his obvious skepticism, Jake turned to his team. "Anyone want to bet on how long before they call back?" 2 hours, said Betty. 1 hour, said Paul. 30 minutes, said Danny. They were all wrong. Tevrick called back in 15 minutes, his colors now showing amazement instead of distress. "It worked. The weather system wants to create art with cloud formations and aurora displays. It says it got bored with just maintaining standard atmospheric conditions." "See?" Jake grinned. "Everyone wants to express themselves." "But how did, you know?" Tevrick asked. "We didn't," Lisa admitted. "But humans have lots of experience with intelligences that don't think like us. Children, animals, even our own artificial intelligences. The key is respecting the difference." After the call ended, Jake walked to the window overlooking the council city. 6 months ago, he and Lisa had been mocked in this very building. Now aliens came to them daily with impossible problems. "Remember when High Chancellor Zorak said we'd serve as a cautionary tale?" Jake mused. Lisa joined him at the window. "Now we're teaching them lessons they forgot thousands of years ago." "Not teaching," Jake corrected. "Reminding. They knew all this once. They just got so advanced they forgot the basics." Betty called out, "Jake, the Melodians are having that resonance problem again. They tried your suggestion about changing the acoustics, but now they say the whole star system is humming." Jake turned back to his team with a grin. "Sounds like they turned their whole system into a musical instrument." "Paul, didn't you play guitar in college?" "Still do," Paul replied. "Great. Tell them about feedback suppression and harmonics. And maybe suggest they tune their star system to a major key instead of minor. It's more cheerful." As Paul started explaining musical theory to confused aliens, Danny took another call. "Director Miller, we've got representatives from 3 new species requesting appointments. They've heard about the human approach and want consultations." "Schedule them for next week," Lisa instructed. "We're booked solid until then." The department had become so popular that species were joining the Galactic Council just to access human problem-solving expertise. It turned out that being the newest, least advanced civilization gave humans a unique advantage. They remembered how to think creatively because they had to. That afternoon, High Chancellor Zorak visited the department personally. The towering insectoid had become one of humanity's biggest supporters, though he still struggled with human informality. "Director Miller, Ambassador Powell," he greeted them. "I bring news. The Council has received a request from the Devourers." Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. The Devourers were one of the predator civilizations Zorak had warned them about during their first meeting. "What kind of request?" Lisa asked carefully. "They want to hire human consultants. Apparently they're having trouble with their hunting grounds. The prey keeps adapting too quickly to their methods." Jake couldn't help but laugh. "They want us to help them hunt better?" "Not exactly." Zorak's mandibles clicked, and what Jake had learned was amusement. "They want to understand how you solve problems. They say if humans can turn a galaxy-threatening crisis into a transport network, maybe you can help them develop sustainable hunting practices. Sustainable hunting? Lisa raised an eyebrow. They want to become conservationists? The Devourers consume energy from living beings, Zorak explained. But they're running out of hunting grounds. They need a new approach or they'll starve. Jake thought for a moment. What if they didn't need to hunt at all? What if they could generate their own energy? Impossible, Zorak said automatically, then caught himself. Or at least we've always believed it impossible. Lisa smiled. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need to change. Send them over. We'll see what we can do. After Zorak left, Jake turned to his team. Anybody know anything about converting predator species to renewable energy? I know about solar panels, Betty offered. And I studied some xenobiology, Paul added. Perfect, Jake said. Let's figure out how to put solar panels on space predators. The team burst out laughing, but they all knew they'd find a solution. They always did. That evening, as the office finally quieted down, Jake and Lisa reviewed the day's cases. The problems ranged from the bizarre to the impossible, yet their success rate remained surprisingly high. You know what's funny? Jake said. They used to laugh at us for being primitive. Now they come to us because we're primitive. Not primitive, Lisa corrected. Just less set in our ways. We haven't had time to forget how to improvise. A message chimed on Jake's console. It was from Earth's president, Director Miller, Ambassador Powell. The United Nations wants to establish the first human innovation academy. They're asking if you'd be willing to teach other species how to think human. Interested? Jake looked at Lisa. Teaching aliens how to think like humans? That's either brilliant or terrifying. Probably both, Lisa agreed. But isn't that always the case with human ideas? They drafted their acceptance, knowing that humanity's greatest contribution to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their resources, but their uniquely human way of looking at problems. Sometimes being the newest kid on the block meant seeing solutions that everyone else had forgotten were possible. As they prepared to leave for the day, one last message came in. It was from the weather system on the Zentari homeworld. Thank you for teaching them to listen. Would you like to see my sunset? I've been practicing. Jake and Lisa stepped out onto the balcony just as the sky exploded in colors no one had ever seen before. The sentient weather system was painting with light and clouds, creating art that spanned the entire horizon. Not bad for a machine that went crazy, Jake observed. Not bad for apes who use chemical propulsion, Lisa countered. They watched the sunset show, knowing that tomorrow would bring more impossible problems. And somehow they'd find a way to solve them. It was, after all, what humans did best. 1 year after humanity joined the Galactic Council, the galaxy had changed in ways no one predicted. Jake Miller stood before a crowd of mixed species in the new Human Innovation Academy, preparing to give the opening speech. Welcome to the first day of class, Jake began, looking out at beings of all shapes and sizes. You're here to learn how to think human. But first, let me tell you what that really means. In the front row sat a young Krellian scientist, her forearms folded nervously. Beside her, a Zentari student shifted colors with anticipation. Even a representative from the Devourers had enrolled, though it kept to the shadows at the edge of the room. 1 year ago, the Galactic Council laughed at humanity, Jake continued. They called us primitive, violent, and unworthy. Today, that same council sends their best minds to learn from us. Not because we're superior, but because we're different. Lisa Powell stepped forward to join him. Human thinking isn't about being smart or advanced. It's about being flexible. It's about seeing problems from new angles. Most importantly, it's about not being afraid to look foolish. She pointed to a holographic display showing various achievements from the past year. The Nexus Crisis, the Sentient Weather System, the Devourer Energy Conversion Project. Each of these solutions came from asking simple questions that advanced civilizations thought were too basic to consider. Jake walked among the students. Your first assignment is to fail at something. I want each of you to try something impossible and fail spectacularly. Then tell us what you learned from it. The Krellian student raised one arm timidly. But failure is inefficient. Our culture values perfection. And that's exactly why you're here, Jake replied with a smile. Humans fail constantly. We build entire systems expecting them to break. We call it failing forward. Every mistake teaches us something new. After the opening session, Jake and Lisa walked through the academy grounds. The building itself was a testament to human creativity, a mix of alien architecture and Earth practicality. Exposed pipes ran alongside quantum conduits. Simple windows overlooked gardens planted with both Earth plants and alien flora. Think they'll get it? Lisa asked. Some will. Others will take time. Jake paused at a display showing the latest success stories. Remember the Melodians star system that started humming? The one Paul tuned to C major? They've turned it into the galaxy's first stellar orchestra. Different planets resonate at different notes. They're selling tickets to composers who want to write symphonies for solar systems. Lisa laughed. And the Devourers? Still adjusting to solar power. They say photosynthesis makes them feel tingly. But they haven't hunted in 3 months, and their population is stabilizing for the first time in millennia. They reached the Academy's main office, where Betty was coordinating the curriculum with Paul and Danny. The team had grown to include teachers from dozens of species, all learning to embrace the human approach. Jake, Lisa, Betty called out. You need to see this. We just got a message from the edge of known space. The screen showed a completely unfamiliar alien form, crystalline and geometric, unlike anything in the Council database. Greetings, the being said through the translator. We are the architects. We have observed your solutions to galactic problems. We come seeking help with our greatest failure. Jake stepped closer. What kind of failure? We built the universe. The room fell silent. Even after a year of impossible problems, this was a new level of extraordinary. You built the universe? Lisa asked carefully. We designed the fundamental forces, set the physical constants, initiated the expansion. But something went wrong. Entropy increases faster than planned. The universe will end trillions of years. Too soon. We have tried everything to fix it. Jake exchanged glances with his team. You're saying the universe is broken? Not broken, inefficient. We seek the human perspective on universal maintenance. Betty whispered. Are we really going to try to fix the universe? Why not? Paul shrugged. We fixed a weather system's artistic block. Jake addressed the architect. Send us your data. We'll take a look. After the transmission ended, the team stared at each other in amazement. This is insane, Danny said. We're literally being asked to debug the universe. Actually, Paul said, already pulling up his console, it's not that different from any other system, just bigger. Much bigger, Betty added. Lisa turned to Jake. Think we can do this? A year ago, we turned a cosmic disaster into a transit system. 6 months ago, we taught a weather system to paint. Last month, we convinced predators to go vegetarian. Jake grinned. Fixing the universe? Just another Tuesday. Over the following weeks, the team dove into the architect's data. The mathematics were beyond anything they'd encountered, but the principles were surprisingly familiar. Look at this. Paul pointed to a series of equations. They're treating entropy like an enemy to be defeated. But what if it's more like the Nexus crisis? Betty nodded excitedly. A natural process trying to reach equilibrium. They're fighting the universe's attempt to evolve. So instead of stopping entropy, Lisa suggested, we help it work more efficiently. They developed a proposal that made the architect's geometric forms flicker with confusion. Instead of fighting entropy, they suggested working with it, creating pockets of order that fed on disorder like cosmic recycling centers. High Chancellor Zorak visited during their work. I hear you're attempting to repair reality itself, not repair, Jake corrected. Optimize. The universe isn't broken. It's just running an inefficient program. Zorak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. A year ago, I thought humans were barely sentient. Now you're consulting on the fundamental nature of existence. I believe I owe your species an apology. No, apology needed, Lisa said. Your skepticism pushed us to prove ourselves. Sometimes the best motivation comes from someone telling you something's impossible. The solution they presented to the architects was elegantly simple. Create areas where entropy could accelerate in controlled ways, generating energy that could be redirected to slow decay elsewhere. Like controlled forest fires preventing larger disasters. This is unprecedented, the lead architect admitted. We spent eons trying to stop entropy. You suggest making it work for us instead. It's what humans do, Jake explained. We don't fight nature. We surf it. The implementation would take millions of years, but the architects were patient beings. They left with promises to return with progress reports and possibly more problems that needed human perspective. As the Academy's first year came to a close, graduation day arrived. The mixed species class had learned not just human techniques, but human philosophy. They'd failed at tasks, succeeded at others, and most importantly, learned to laugh at themselves. The Krellian student who once feared failure now proudly displayed her collection of magnificent mistakes. The Zentari had learned to paint with their color-changing abilities instead of just using them for communication. Even the Devourer had developed a taste for what it called ethical energy consumption. High Chancellor Zorak gave the closing address. 1 year ago, we thought we had nothing to learn from humanity. We were wrong. They have taught us that advancement isn't about complexity. It's about perspective. Sometimes the newest eyes see the oldest problems most clearly. After the ceremony, Jake and Lisa stood on the Academy balcony, watching graduates return to their ships. Many would establish their own alternative solution departments. Human thinking was spreading across the galaxy like a benevolent virus. Think we've changed things enough? Lisa asked. Look at that. Jake pointed to the sky. The Nexus Gateway was visible even in daylight, a permanent reminder of human ingenuity. We turned the galaxy's biggest crisis into its biggest asset. I'd say that's a good start. A message arrived from Earth. The president was establishing similar academies on every human colony. The techniques developed here would be taught to new generations, ensuring humanity never lost its creative edge. As the sun set, painted by the artistic weather system, Jake reflected on their journey. From being mocked as primitive apes to becoming the galaxy's problem-solving consultants. From barely earning a seat at the table to being asked to fix the universe itself. You know what's funny? Jake said. They spent that first day insulting everything about us. Our biology, our technology, our history. And now? Now they're lining up to learn how to think like humans. To embrace failure, question assumptions, and see problems as opportunities. Lisa smiled. Turns out being primitive was our greatest strength. Not primitive, Jake corrected, echoing Lisa's words from months before. Just human. In the distance, ships from 100 worlds passed through the Nexus Gateway. Each carried beings who had learned that sometimes the most advanced solution was also the simplest. That wisdom could come from unexpected places, and that a species young enough to remember what it's like to struggle might have exactly what an ancient galaxy needed. The age of human influence had truly begun. Not through conquest or superior technology, but through the simple power of looking at old problems with fresh eyes. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what it needed. As Jake and Lisa prepared to tackle whatever impossible challenge tomorrow would bring, they knew one thing for certain. The best response to being underestimated was to exceed every expectation.